Welcome to the Public AI Cafe. Today, our speaker is Ola Bonati. She's a researcher, storyteller, and facilitator working on topics that explore the implications of various technologies on our lives and culture. So, hello, Ola.
Hello.
Hello, and hello, Emma.
Hello.
Emma is my assistant. And I'm Carmen McWilliams. I'm with Emma today, the moderators and cafe managers from Grassroots Arts. And this cafe is a part of a European research project called AI for Media. Our talk title today is Pressure, Hype, and Research Ethics, exploring the potential of generative AI in academic research across social sciences and humanities. So please take notice that the session is recorded. No confidential information shall be shared in this cafe session. In this cafe, the speaker expresses her personal view and opinion. This is not necessarily the official AI for Media project opinion. And what's this cafe about? It's an online forum to gain insight into the European AI scene, and participants get the chance to share knowledge and experiences and meet stakeholders from various areas of AI research. As you know, this is a cafe where it's interactive. So if you feel like you want to ask a question, please send it to us via the text box on the right side. You have a menu, and there you can ask questions and send us basically a chat question. And feel free, after the presentation, we try to answer your questions. So anytime, send us please your questions. And of course, I welcome you all in this cafe. Even it's summertime here in Cologne. In the moment, we have 30 degrees, so it's it's difficult to work on the screen. So, who is our speaker today? I'm reading you shortly her bio. Ola Bonati is a researcher, storyteller, and facilitator working on topics that explore the implications of various technologies on our lives and culture. In her work, she investigates the consequences of Web 3.0 hype, politics of design, digital monopolies, platform labor, and digital habits. She led workshops and public talks presenting her research at the University of Amsterdam, Reassemble Lab, Dutch Design Week, Fiber Festival, ARS Electronica, IAM Internet, IMPAKT Node, the AMRO Festival, and more. She frequently turns to writing about technology as her main medium, but remains hopeful and playful by creating critical new media pieces and interactive workshops. So again, thank you for being here, Ola, and I'm giving you now the microphone, and you are today our presenter.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for introducing me. Yeah, we are going to talk today about the report that I recently published in collaboration with Institute of Sound and Vision under the AI for Media project. Yeah, so you've introduced me already, but let me maybe come clean. I am not an AI researcher. I'm a new media researcher with a background in digital humanities, and that means that I position myself oftentimes between designers, developers, academic and non-academic researchers, storytellers, activists, and this is also where my work is mostly focused on trying to make connections between work that these people do and I myself do, always with sort of interactive spirit, because I do write a lot, but my main hopefully main medium soon is actually to interact with people and have the conversation about technology more rather than just create long pieces of writing. But this time actually this report combined both, because for this report I had to interview practitioners and researchers in social sciences and humanities who are now applying artificial intelligence in their work, and more specifically large language models, to be more precise. So what are we going to talk about today? First, I will touch upon the why behind the report, why this angle in particular, explaining exactly why I chose a bit of a different route than what is popularly discussed. Then we'll talk about the unique position of social scientists and humanities scholars and the work that they're doing in applications of AI research, using also examples from my interviewees, and current strategies and applications, social sciences and humanities when it comes to that adoption of AI. Finally, we'll try to expand beyond the hype and look at how we can do AI in the academic way. But how I started was I asked myself a question: who gets to research AI? So there's a lot of stories on how people work and apply AI in novel ways and novel and practical ways, but not enough attention is being paid to who gets to work with it in exploratory but informed way. So our researchers, our scholars, and how can we support these people in doing so? This is another reason why to choose this angle, meaning focusing on people themselves first, is my way to escape this double narrative where we have either the doomers who are definitely against using AI in academia first of all, but and then we have the other end of spectrum where tech accelerationists promote it at all costs, and this is not a very productive narrative. Yeah, so instead of that, this report actually focuses on how we can support people who will then inform mindful ways of using AI in our lives. But the main problems are in academia specifically. Academics are currently stretched very thin. This is also the sentiment that I heard from the interviewed researchers, that the pressure to adopt AI in their work is putting a lot of new responsibilities on them. And they're slowly becoming more overworked with, first of all, learning these new tools, and then finding the ways in which they can be applied academically, and then passing on that knowledge to students in an informed way. This is also very difficult because it's it asks them additional energy from them. And all that while universities are historically places of slow change. So the speed and pressure that is sifting through to the academics is not very, it's not something that universities are very good at supporting. And there's also interesting relationship change, as we used to saw that the public would expect from academia to ideate, test, and later, of course, recommend what to do with technology. Now academia finds itself under pressure of having to catch up with what is already being widely adopted in the society. Yeah, and then of course that doesn't necessarily foster the most supportive environment for the ethical research practices. And this is also a direct quote here: "Going slow feels like a crime." This is kind of this is a collective quote I've created from the conversations that I had with researchers, that actually now, what it used to be a spirit of academia, which is taking time with research, now it starts to feel like a crime. But why should we focus on social sciences and humanities field, since this is a prevalent issue across academia, so not only in these fields? Well, I argue in this report that social sciences and humanities, so SSH, are uniquely positioned to examine and work with AI. But at this stage, that doesn't necessarily mean they're better or worse. It's just that there's unique opportunities that could either be used or missed. First of all, historically, for social sciences and humanities, using digitals to research cultural and sociological phenomena has been a practice. So considering that AI touches upon both, so the cultures and our social practices, this is a great opportunity for SSH field to step in. And they've also been balancing between tech and human issues for a while. So findings now as advocates would be advocates of a positive practice in this relationship could be a great thing. But these fields, the SSH field, also faces a lot of ambiguity right now. Main issues in SSH are technical skills. So technical skills are it's already been a problem for a while. So for a lot of social sciences and humanities students and practitioners, there's not a clear path, a learning path to technical skills. They don't always know exactly what kind of skills they should be learning, and sometimes improvise. For example, coding still has not become a standardized skills in the majority of SSH skill research among majority of SSH researchers. And right now there's a big pressure to learn coding. But that also means that it actually introduces a bit of an identity crisis, because there's some sort of apprehension to learning technical skills among humanities scholars in particular, I would say. They ask themselves a question, and I wrote it down actually, am I putting more and more energy into understanding tools themselves rather than focusing on the research question that I will then use this tool to research? So there's also blurring boundaries between disciplines. For humanities in particular, there's some sort of a sense of devaluing classical humanistic scholarship, with putting more and more attention on technical skills. And there's a lack of clear guidelines on what to do still. A lot of researchers that I talked to about it, they create their own guidelines. They start to work on creating their own guidelines, but it is not with a strong support or strong guidance from their mother institutions. But that ambiguity could also be a space of power. Actually, this could be quite empowering for SSH, because without these clear boundaries, we can now talk about AI in a new way. So there's new narratives. There are new narratives popping up about how to research AI, how to approach AI. For example, themes like feminist AI, decolonial AI, humane AI, slow AI, and those are some examples of labs that are already practicing this. But for example, feminist, for those who haven't heard about feminist approaches to AI, they're concerned with diversity in gender and race and cultural narratives throughout development of applications of AI. So basically, what do we feed our models matters. Paying attention to what kind of data we use to train these models, what then they propel into the world, what kind of narratives they propel into the world is important. It is important to look at these models closely, to not propagate harmful stereotypes. Similarly to that, the colonial AI is also looking at this, but is also recognizing that AI is being used in governments, industries, and civil society, and the impact of such of these applications could be actually harmful for already vulnerable communities. Social science, and of course, in all these themes, social sciences and humanities scholars are very active. Actually, they're at the core of a lot of these initiatives. So yes, there's a lot of unknowns, but within those unknowns, some scholars find strengths. But what does it mean when it comes to skills? We are no longer actually using computation methods as an addition to the work of a researcher, but it's becoming more of an exploratory tool which helps you with literature analysis, ideation, and shaping of hypotheses. All of this is still under scrutiny. There's a lot of discussion in which of these AI should actually be used and can be used ethically, if it's even actually possible to use it ethically in these stages. But nevertheless, there's some already interesting applications. These are just a few examples that I pulled out of the report. In computational social sciences, for example, creating the synthetic data sets which then mimic existing data sets, and in that case, avoiding having to use real data and preserve privacy. And this is also quite controversial example, but it's already being applied. Using LLMs in sociology means, for example, combining a lot of different types of data, which is actually more akin to how we are interacting online, which is through images, words, all sorts of formats. So LLMs can be very helpful in combining these and making conclusions out of that, or helping a researcher make conclusions of this through this analysis of a mix. Like this, and in, for example, art history, which allows researchers to use LLMs to identify trends over time and discuss influences and styles that develop across across the timeline of a particular artwork, for example. And those are just a few examples of what is already being done. But in terms of skills, again, the more coding you can do as a researcher, the more independent and critical your practice with AI will be. So there is a duality in there. There's definitely need for more technical skills, or researchers will become more and more independent if they have them. But soft skills are also on the rise. And here again, social sciences and humanities can actually provide guidelines on both, and in the end, filling the gaps that are present in other disciplines. So creating frameworks for other fields of scholarship to approach learning AI in a more holistic way, rather than just either focusing on technical skills or not. And so there's a few issues right now that the viewees I interacted with identified. For example, they say that they struggle to convince their students to follow research and fellow researchers to use these tools within limits for inspiration and rely on them with some sort of remaining a bit more critical of them. Even more so, they actually notice that their fellow researchers or students, oftentimes their expectations towards tools exceed what the actual tool can do. So they don't have full understanding of how these tools work, and they sort of trial and error through their research, which is not a very academic way, of course, to do so. Some strategies to counteract this problem is, for example, creating courses and classes that teach people not only just the applications themselves, but the history of them and how to break them apart, to look through the surface layer, which is the interactive layer where you can actually talk with the model. There could be, in some open source models, there's opportunities to actually look past this layer. There's also a lot of knowledge being lost. A few researchers identified that they acknowledge that their colleagues are actually working on very similar projects, and they oftentimes are unable to catch up with them. And there's a lot of knowledge that they could share and actually overcome obstacles and initial obstacles much faster if they would actually simply meet in person. And so some of the researchers I interviewed took initiative to create meetups across departments, where they would just update each other on the latest tools that they've been using. And it's a very simple idea, but it actually eliminated a lot of uncertainties for researchers. So it's not even I wouldn't say it's immediately comes to mind as a revolutionary idea, but still it's actually it's very helpful at this stage of AI applications. There's also a few in universities, the universities host universities of my researchers, they already began to hire dedicated support staff, so so-called tech support, so people who are actually skilled in using these models that can support students in using them with in a mindful way. So there's actually discussing the research question and actually finding the ways in which this tool can be useful or not. So there's a lot of that that could be eliminated already thanks to those. This uncertainty could be eliminated thanks to dedicated staff. This is also a bit controversial because some people say that that doesn't necessarily support learning from the students themselves on how to operate these models themselves. So it fragments the knowledge over time. But at this point, it's been said to be quite helpful. And there's also a new type of responsibility from universities that's emerging, which is creating tools that allow for understanding these tools. So an extra layer, and I will provide you with an example in just a second. But first, we're going to talk a bit more about this breaking of AI as a practice. So to encourage people or in this case, it was actually students to be more exploratory with these tools. There are some, for example, at the University of Amsterdam, there are some workshops and courses that are now being designed. I'm not sure if they're already launched, but that will encourage students to basically to comparatively explore different generative AI tools and purposefully achieve contradictory results, or just basically break them and make them escape their coded logic, which will in general that's the point behind that creating such courses is to encourage students and anyone who's interested to be more playful with these tools and look past the surface layer and perhaps actually skip ChatGPT, BARD, and all these interactive, these tools that with an easy layer of interactivity, and actually look perhaps at the Hugging Face and try to break the models, try to adapt the models themselves, but basically give people more confidence in exploring these models. Which is some maybe seems a bit counterintuitive because to create a new method, of course, we need to replicate the same results over and over again. But with at this stage of exploration, this is supposed to encourage students, and it's supposed from what I hear is actually it's quite successful. When it comes to new tools, this extra layer that I talked about. There's a really good example, which I've also discussed in the report more in depth. Prompt Compass by Eric Bora from University of Amsterdam. It offers a view of various models and pre-filled prompts sourced from existing research papers. So researchers can edit and reuse such prompts and input their own data. So they can compare results when using different models to see which one is more suitable for the goal that they want to achieve. So it creates some sort of it is not entirely it does still allows them to play with the model, but it adds a bit of a extra layer of help. So they don't feel like they're overwhelmed by all the options, but they're actually being somewhat guided by this tool. And this could be, and there's of course I'm hearing that there's more and more tools such as these being developed, but this one in particular I'd recommend checking out because it's available on GitHub, and you can already start playing with it. There's also instructions on how to do so. But aside from what we are discussing now, where should we go from here? Conversations we should have. In my conversations with after having these interviews with researchers, there's still a persisting question: what kind of researchers are we training actually? How can we avoid servicing industry demands and instead creating future-proof critical skills among researchers? there's still it's a university's responsibility to separate themselves, of course, from the industry, and in some ways remain critical. So this question is not asked enough, in my view. Also, environment, knowing that the burdens of tech accelerationism are so visible and so prevalent. Academia should also not give in to the hype and create separate practices from what is being currently pushed on us as the wider audience. But yeah, as I said, I turned to writing and talking about technology, but I also quite enjoyed discussing it with people, and all your insights actually inform whatever I then turn to in my research practice. So I am now happy to pass the microphone to the audience, or to the text, I guess, because I guess we can't hear the audience, but if you have questions, I'm happy to answer them. And yeah, so thank you so much. This is you can reach me under these links. Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you. And here's already a question, but I encourage everybody to send us questions, because then it's more fun. And therefore, please send us your questions. Would be very nice. So my first question is, if, just coming to your slide, if AI is, in our understanding, is just a tool for academics, it's basically supposedly supporting an academic, how to train this critical behavior of using the tool? How you have like ideas how to better train?
Yeah, so I'm quite maybe spoiled in that sense, because coming from digital humanities or new media research, we've been really, in my studies, I've been really encouraged to remain critical. So whenever using a tool, not only you're using a tool to achieve the answer to your research question, but you also examine the tool itself. And this has been often, when I read, for example, new papers about that discuss AI applications in research, I feel like, yes, of course, there's a guideline on how to use the tool, but there's not enough attention being paid to how to criticize who made the tool, where is it coming from, what are the layers that are building it, and of course, not all of it is transparent. So that also needs to be acknowledged, that the tools that we are using, which is also discussed in the report, are, a majority of them are not transparent enough for us to make these assessments. So still, I would say there needs to be a sort of this reflection needs to be really trained into researchers, like needs to be a part of the researcher's practice, to really first examine the tool, and most of all also justify why is it so important to use this tool aside from all the other available tools, because as I said, these tools are oftentimes quite heavy or quite resource intensive, and yeah, we need to have this sense of responsibility and be critical of our own practice. And yeah, I'm still waiting for really strong arguments for why a AI application is better than what is already available there. So yeah, this is how I see it.
Thank you. And next question. Thanks so much for the presentation. One moment, I have to see it better. One moment. Viewpoint. Oh, it's a big question. I have to just make the. I have to detach from the. Sorry for a moment. I don't know. Thanks so much for the presentation. I don't know what's happening here. I would be curious to hear if you think practices that are merging around the use of generative AI in SSH can help to break academic silos and bring more interdisciplinarity, or will it have an opposite effect?
Well, I believe that there's already so many researchers I talked to already have been practicing with use of many skills actually. So in some ways, it could be a double-edged sword in which if we don't diversify within AI tooling, we'll always refer to maybe the 3 useful tools and then the commercial ones. That's the biggest risk, that we will remain in the commercial realm because that's what's easy, that's what's accessible, which no matter how many options there are implemented in ChatGPT, it's not a diverse or diverse tool. It's still a centralized tool that provides a similar lens, whether it's images, whether it's animations, whatever you're working with, it's the source that matters, that then that creates this influence across whatever you've reached, whatever the output will be. So it could encourage, like this course, for example, that I discussed about these attempts on creating the courses on how to break AI are the closest practices that I see that are trying to find diversity within the tool itself, or trying to really look at the tool and break it apart and subvert its normative power. So be really playful with it in a way that it's not that the designers or the programmers of the tool did not intend, which it could create an opportunity to be very creative yeah, I think I'm rather skeptical at this point, but it's a changing thing. So I'm looking forward to see it more.
Great. Thanks, Ola. I loved learning about Prompt Compass and can imagine a diverse ecosystem of these kinds of domain-specific tools made by practitioners from the field are very helpful. How do you think the development of this kind of tooling coming from the SSH domain itself can be best supported? That comes from Philo.
I think, first of all, we need to start inviting people who are not AI specialists or academics. We need to start inviting people who will then eventually inform our practice in a way that is not we are not entrenched in our academic view on what is useful, what is not. There's not enough sort of this community sourced AI tool building. So I believe that's why, as a researcher, I try to, as much as I can, to actually venture out of my writing and my research, and then speak and interact with artists, creators, storytellers, makers of different sorts, because I believe that at the end of the day, to diversify the AI, but also the tooling that we're going to create later, we need to first source from what the community needs. So we need to ask the people who actually who are we going to research later on, what is helpful for them. So yeah, I would say getting to the going back to the source, which is the people themselves.
Yes, thank you. I'm saying thank you. And now comes Peti. I hope I say the name right. Thank you. The idea behind breaking AI and the idea of play makes me wonder, did you talk to any academics in creative writing? And if so, were there any methods they may have spoken of for creative writing, not just research writing?
Maybe not creative writing, but I talked to researchers in linguistics, and one interesting, that's also wider discussed in the report, but an interesting relationship emerged, because the more the researchers who are let's say less experienced with AI, but then they start to play with AI, in linguistics specifically, started to work with this tool, they questioned their own translation and their own interpretation of a text. And so it created a sort of an opposite effect. So it did provide them with multiple examples. So in a sense, somebody could say that it's helpful because you have multiple examples of a translation that you could use, but it also starts to, and for some researchers it became a sort of a poison, because it undermined their initial intuition that they had when translating the text. So this is, for creative sparring, it can be useful, but it actually became, in this case, it became this tool nudged on the researcher, and then they sort of they lost the confidence in their own interpretation. So I would say, as much as they are actually helpful, I think it's the more of a problem of a practice and our sort of sense of agency that will develop over time. I believe that we'll become more critical and sort of less swayed by these suggestions, and actually choose the ones that feel closer to us. But I can see that in this particular case, why the sort of needle in the haystack problem emerged, where you have so many options that you start questioning your own creativity, your own output. So that's the problem, I'd say.
Yes, thank you. A lot of questions coming in. I thank you for all the great questions you're sending us, so feel encouraged to do so. Here comes Natalie from Canada. For Ola in Quebec and Canada, the academic sector has recently adopted Tech SDGs framework. SDGs is the Sustainable Development Goals framework, as a collaboration tool. Have you considered that these 17 SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals, as an important lever for the SSH angle within AI projects?
All these abbreviations are quite hard, right? To follow. When it comes down to practice, because to me, okay, recommendations are great, and this eventually will trickle down to the practice. But researchers I talk to, they say that that was actually quite not that it was shocking, but it was quite strong statement from one of the researchers I interviewed, that unless something is easy, people will not use it. And for example, using open source or smaller models that you have to then run on your own computer or learn how to work with, unless it's made practical and very easy to use, people will not use it. And hence, for example, this prompt compass, they want to encourage people to use smaller models on their own scale, and to actually practice with them, because it is, I understand that there's the SDGs are a sort of the policy that will eventually take flight, but currently there's not very few people are concerned with the environmental impact or the more mindful use, and more of the easiness of the ease of use actually. So I would say the focus should be more on first practical applications of smaller the layers we could put on top of the tools to teach people as soon as possible to be independent from the mainstream and big consuming centers for AI. But yeah, it's all I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful to have this impact eventually.
Thank you, Natalie, and thank you, Ola. And now we are coming to Ranit. I hope I say it right. Given your background, are there any interesting areas ARS Electronica and new media are working with artificial intelligence? Also, which parts of AI for research is likely to be part of a hype cycle, and which parts are here to stay? Oh.
Let me break it down. So interesting. There's a lot of apprehension. I already say that. There's a lot of apprehension when it comes to AI use. In more of a it seems like that's why the community around, let's say, the media art, which is where the what is mostly what ARS Electronica is mostly about, is creating pieces that are actually exposing, let's say, this impact of AI, and they are still trying to balance this, having to catch up with AI as artists, and having to sort of counteract what is happening with the copyright use and all this the devaluing of the artist's work with AI. So they are playing with both, right? They're exposing what is being done, but they're also feel like they're being forced to use these tools, and this is really an uncomfortable position and for artists who are always, of course, in precarious situations. Artists and makers. But what was the sorry, what was the second part of the question?
The second part, this was about the ARS Electronica and AI, but which part of AI for research is likely to be part of a hype cycle, and which parts are here to stay?
Mostly the AI hype cycle, for example. There's a lot of enthusiasm about how AI will help with annotating data. The large language models will help annotating data, which is the most sort of tedious part of a lot of social scientists, researchers' work. And that seems to, I see it as it will stay, probably because it's, first of all, cost effective.
Yes.
And as we always see, when something is cost effective, it will probably be adopted. Whether it should be like this, it's another question, but that I see already being widely adopted. But definitely, I actually see that, for example, with some of the researchers I talked to, they allow their students to use ChatGPT to create blocks of text, and they create their own little guidelines on how to do it. But they can already also, of course, tell when they go overboard, and then so they have this really ambiguous relationship where they try to let students to explore these tools, but also rein them in, and this is really a difficult position. But eventually, it seems like we might to actually source a truly creative, or like to have students create their own things. We might need to actually that's a funny example, but there are already being exams done on paper these days, because how are we going to train these creative skills? Because people are not able to stop themselves. That's the problem. So the lack of boundaries and lack of sort of this self-restraint is not, it's something that will probably push the generative part of at least AI, the text generation back, because we will need people to still create novel work. We'll need the students to be trained for their creativity and critical skills, and that is really hard to do when you are given this unlimited machine that can continue to spew just unlimited blocks of text, right? So this is I see that being actively limited at the university.
Yes. Then I have one more question from Lucas. Thank you for those great insights, Ola. I was just wondering whether you also talk to students, have thoughts on how generative AI also transforms the student side with SSH.
Oh, the student side. Well, so they are I've been talking to their teachers mostly, but what they're telling me from conversations with people, they are, first of all, overwhelmed, but they also become less and less impressed about what these tools can do. It's most of all because the amount of AI applications that are being done. So they're basically they're overstimulated with amount of the available applications. So they're becoming less impressed by it, but still, at the end of the day, they will fall back on them when they need them. And that's the problem, is that they actually don't know exactly what they're doing with them, and how the particular model is coming to the conclusion that they will receive. So they don't understand these layers still. But yeah, they're not particularly concerned with that, and that's the problem, that there's needs to be more and more mindful approach to AI amongst the academics, but then that should trickle down to, of course, to their students. And the courses that I mentioned that are being developed at the university, where the AI is being broken apart, or there is a history of large language models being taught, to give the more sort of full understanding of how did we arrive at this technological point that where we are. So not only just to learn how to apply it, but to just really understand, first of all, also politically how politically how these tools will then be adapted. All the aspects of the ethics of use of AI, and who gets to produce the AI. All these parts of the knowledge would actually, I believe, will give the students more. They will care about. Hopefully, they will care more about what they're actually using, because it's as of now, it just seems like yet another app, right? A lot of the times, like I see people use a ChatGPT on their phones, and like this conversation, this funny gimmick that they use, and it just seems very it just seems very easy and fun thing to do. And I don't see why that wouldn't become a problem later on when they go to universities. They will continue using that tool for everything, unless, of course, they understand this. I mean, hopefully they will be given that knowledge to understand this whole chain of connections between, okay, the tech industry, the politics that we have around it, the sociological impact, the dangers of it when it comes to the coloniality, the feminist theories that talk about it. So, oh wow, I hope I answered this question. I'm giving another lecture here.
Emma, I think now it's time for your question, because it somehow fits in. You sent me a question.
Yes, but I have a question from the last question, another question. So you said they use ChatGPT, for example, or other AI programs in university, but I mean you can use it on different levels. For example, ChatGPT can do everything for you, or use it for finding, I don't know, some sources, good sources. How did they use it in the
Yeah, so for example, a lot of these, for example, there's a lot of already cases where researchers used what seemingly look like a reliable source that they got from ChatGPT, and then ended up being a fake source, right? I also myself actually tested it a couple of times. I would ask for a list of similar research papers, and it would fabricate research papers, and not all of them. So just here and there will be a totally inexistent, perfectly legitimately looking source, so there's no truly reliable way to use ChatGPT at this point. I don't believe there's 100%. You have to understand first what you're looking for to be able to critically examine what it's giving you. Of course, for example, as I said, to creatively spar, for example, with things that sort of in a way that you would interact with the thesaurus, where it just gives you multiple options. But we have to understand that those are basically this model will generate answers that are not necessarily that are just basically predictive answers, right? It predicts what the next best word would be, and yes, some of this is of course true, but for a researcher, there's been a lot of research papers last year being debunked because they've been using false data or false information or non-existent sources of ChatGPT. One way to actually, that's a bit of a funny example, but there's particular words that ChatGPT uses and if you search for this particular word in platforms that publish papers, you see that since 2021, the use of that particular word skyrocketed among research papers. So there's already a lot of academics are being somewhat, I want to say, corrupted, but they're at least they don't always disclose that they use ChatGPT, right? So that's also a problem. I would say, ChatGPT can be useful, but it cannot be used as a sole tool for research.
Yeah, so you kind of have to know which AI you use for what you need. For example, this AI for this AI site for sources, finding good sources. This for writing. I don't know.
Yeah, the problem is that we don't. So for most available, the commercial tools, most of them we are not given the source data that they're being trained on, right? We don't understand fully what they've been, how are they thinking actually. So to really determine at this point, this model I can use for that, this model I can use. There are differences. For example, some models are better at data annotation and particular data, for example, of particular kind, than others. And there are already papers which are also available in the report, which talk about how they're actually better than humans in annotating data in some case. Better, that's also questionable what is better, but there are models which are better than others for particular things, but they're still they cannot be 100% recommended in my view for sort of this free reign type of research where you just let it do what it needs to do, and then it use that data, use whatever it comes out of it as true.
Yeah, I have no more questions. You have questions, Emma? You're fine?
Yeah.
Good, you're fine. I have one last of Gregory. Maybe that's the end for today, because we had a lot of great questions. When can critical reflection result in protest of abstination from using AI in any research creative practice? Oh,
sorry, could you read that again?
Can critical reflection result in protest of abstination from using artificial intelligence in any research creative practices?
I'm not sure if I understand.
Me neither. It's and unfortunately Gregory also left. He posted that question and then he left. So I think what I analyzed it once: when can critical reflection result in abstination from using AI in any research creative practice? That's
okay. Maybe at what stage, right? Yeah, there's these. First of all, before you even start using a tool, I would say also that's what I'm talking about in the report again. That as a researcher, first of all, your main concern is to create a strong research question, and yeah, of course, you then proceed to test different methods to answer that research question. But what I've been seeing in a particular example for linguistics scholars, that their own research question is being pulled in different directions by the tool itself. That should sort of ring alarm bells. You cannot let the affordances of a tool to inform your research question in the end, or to sort of to let it shape your research question only. Mm-hmm. So there's sort of returning to the basis of what the researcher's practice is actually just, first of all, be convinced that what you're researching is important, and whatever options and whatever how many answers you get from these tools, because they could literally be endless. That cannot corrupt. Like, you cannot let that corrupt you, and that's very difficult right now. So at this point, I'm saying, we're also talked about it with researchers, that there's a lot of just enthusiasm that's carrying, and the hype, of course, as I said, it's trickling down into the academia, but that yeah, it's somewhat polluting the researcher's practice. And then again, we have to, as social scientists and humanities, let's say in that particular example, focus on the on creating some guidelines and practices that will eventually emerge, but we cannot now give people guidances that are well ill-informed at this stage, right? That are not entirely 100% certain. That will then carry on through new generations of researchers, right? Because if we start creating now practices that are sort of based on the hype or this enthusiasm, then we just propel these harmful practices into the future, and that's the real risk. So first, asking ourselves, what is my research question? What am I actually trying to find out? Why do I actually need this tool? First of all, is it actually adding anything to my research? Use of AI, and sometimes it can be, as I said, there's already proofs that that it can be quite helpful. But yeah, to remain skeptical and remain protective of your own research practice.
Yes, I think that's very nice. It's basically also having common sense, no? That you basically keep what you think as a human being is interesting to ask, and not what your tool.
But the problem is that the common sense, when you get delivered a perfectly smart, like a text that sounds so smart and so convincing, right? There's this paper, Stochastic Dangers of Stochastic Parrots, that I always remember. That these tools are designed basically to answer, to sort of sound as credible as possible, and people get. We are prone to be swayed by it. So this is really it's hard to recommend it, because I know that it's really recommend restraint, because I know how exciting and how amazing these tools can sound.
Mm-hmm. So thank you for, I think, also our participants. I have no more question. I don't have more question. Emma is fine. So thank you very much, Ola. This was a very informative and interesting session, and I wish you a nice afternoon. And one thing, I will send the recording to you first. You are the one who decides, Ola, if you want to have it published or not on the AI Cafe video channel. You decide. You will say yes or no, and then if yes, we have it again on the AI Cafe channel. If no, it's fine. So, and again, thank you everybody, and have a nice afternoon. Bye bye. No? Bye bye.
Bye. Bye.